President Obama has proposed additional legislation to create and protect jobs. In order for this to benefit low-income families, what provisions should this additional legislation contain, Nick?
Well, it's very likely that whatever Congress passes will have a couple of really important provisions. One is an extension of some provisions of unemployment insurance that are now scheduled to expire at the end of this month. I think that's very likely to be in and that will be very important to families. An additional provision that I think is often underappreciated that will help families is an extension of the funds to state and local governments that we've been talking about a little bit here. The reason those are important to low-income families is very closely related to all the programs and services that we've been talking about here today. The current provisions providing aid to state and local governments expire in about 12 months. December 2010, the additional funds to states run out. And that means that states now, as they start to build their budgets for next year, are looking at essentially a cliff in the federal funds. We are perhaps in the beginning stages of a economic recovery, but that's not yet translated into revenues rebounding, and it's not going to translate into revenues rebounding for a year or two. What that means is that at the same time states are facing the increased demand for all the services, at the same time their revenues have bottomed out and not yet recovered, the federal funds are coming to an end. An extension of those funds would allow states, to at least some degree, to continue to provide the services that are so important to families. And I think that's not appreciated as much as it could. And the key thing to remember about that is that's also a jobs producer. That when you deliver funds to state and local governments, it means they don't have to lay off employees, they don't have to cut payments to providers, to small businesses, and those dollars, the fear is that if those funds are lost, those providers would then not be spending money in other businesses in their community. By getting those dollars into the community, the federal government, through state and local assistance, the federal government can keep the recovery going.
Elaine and Noah, your organizations have done research showing that low-income families pay more in state taxes and local taxes as a share of their incomes than other families. Why is that?
Well, certainly not as many folks pay as much attention to state and local taxes probably as we hear about federal taxes, particularly right now when there's a lot of eyes on what the federal government's doing with health care and climate change and other things. But, state and local governments rely more heavily on sales and excise taxes, which, of course, as a share of income, because low-income families have to spend most of their income and do so on necessities, it's a greater share of their income to pay for those things, unlike higher-income folks who save a lot of their incomes. And we do have in many states, and in the case of North Carolina and Massachusetts, we have income taxes, but they're not nearly as progressive as the federal income tax is. And then you add property tax to the mix, and overall we have systems which you might describe as upside down. Which is where low-income families pay a greater share of their income than high-income families.
Noah, what can state policymakers do about that? How can they change that?
In Massachusetts, it's actually low and middle-income people all pay more than higher-income people. So it's the pattern that you described, but it's not just low-income people who pay more of their income in taxes. First of all, there are things in many of our tax systems that already are pretty good. So while there are the exact flaws that Elaine mentioned, in Massachusetts, for example, we do exempt food and clothing from our sales tax, which are two good ways to make sure the sales tax is not as difficult for low-income people as it would be otherwise. We also have a state earned income tax credit. The federal government has a program called the Earned Income Tax Credit, which for low-wage working people gives them a credit through the tax code. In Massachusetts, we match a portion of that. That's another way to help lower-income people have a more fair tax system for them. One of the reasons why our state taxes higher income people at lower rates now is that we did some tax cuts that primarily helped higher income people. We used to tax dividend income at a higher rate than ordinary wages. The state did that because that was one way to compensate for the fact that higher income people generally were taxed at lower rates overall. So we could restore a higher rate on dividend income that would begin to balance the picture. We also used to have a higher income tax rate in Massachusetts. We cut our income tax rate fairly dramatically. And the income tax is the one tax that high-income people have to pay at the same rates as everybody else as a share of their income. So by restoring some of that, the state could certainly make the tax system more equitable. I don't want to get too technical, but there are other things that you could do, raising the personal deduction, which is the amount that everybody can deduct from their income, which helps lower income people more, because if you have a personal deduction of $9,000 on $18,000 income, that means half of your income is exempt. $9,000 on $1 million of income means that your income goes down only a few points. So you could raise the deduction while you're raising the rate, and that would have the effect of giving a net tax cut to lower and some middle income people and raise taxes on people who are now paying less of their income than everyone else.
Nick, the federal government provides a portion of the safety net for low-income families. How do states and federal government share that burden?
What's interesting right now, as states are facing this massive revenue crunch and are having to cut back on spending in a lot of different areas, is that even the programs where it's a shared federal-state responsibility are taking a hit because states can't afford their full share. And even some programs that are entirely federally financed, like food stamps, are proving challenging because states are having trouble bearing the cost of administering the programs, of having enough eligibility workers on the front lines to respond in a timely way to applications for assistance. Say for a family who's just lost job, comes in need of emergency food stamp assistance. Some states have done so much in the way of cutbacks in their workforce, and they face such an increase in the number of people seeking that assistance that they're not able to respond in as timely a way as would be appropriate in a time of great need.
How can states be innovative in handling those situations, Elaine?
Well, we're doing lots of things. Even though we were one of the states that took, as I think, most advantage that we could as the Federal Recovery Act and the changes there, we also left money on the table. I mean, we are reducing what we pay providers who see, patients who are Medicaid clients. And when we do that, it has the rippling effect on the economy because those providers are then can't turn around and pay their workers, and then
Sure.
So we did leave some money on the table. We also participated, as much as we could. I think as a state example of food stamps, North Carolina, I think adopted a model food stamp outreach program this year, and actually managed to find a little bit of money in the budget to hire a little bit of staff to help, with the outreach and help local communities develop the best plans they can to implement it. And I've been hearing about the good work. I mean, that's why in North Carolina, we've seen 25% increase in the number of families participating in that. We could do better on outreach, but we're trying.
What is the most important thing we can do for low-income families right now? Noah, let's start with you.
I think the most important thing is not to take away the basic supports that people are relying on. So if people need childcare to be able to work, to not take away the childcare. If they need health care to be able to function, not to take away the health care. And if they're trying to take advantage of the opportunity to go back to school because they don't have a job, to not take away access to community colleges and state colleges. I think there are basic supports that are there for poor people that they need now more than ever, both to be able to get by and really to be able to invest in themselves so that they can climb out of poverty as the recession ends. And I think that when the federal government thinks of priorities, one priority should be helping the states to make sure that they don't have to make those cuts now that will drive people deeper into poverty and will mean that those people won't be able to contribute effectively as we come out. So I think both to help those people and to build a strong economy going forward, it's maintaining those basic supports and particularly education and training.
Do you add anything to that?
I don't know that. I don't think so. I mean, the other things that come to mind are, in particularly North Carolina, something we're looking at is making sure that we can keep higher education affordable. We need more financial aid assistance for people who are looking to be training. And most of the workforce of the next 20 or 30 years in North Carolina there's certainly a chunk of it that's in public school, but most of those workers are already in the workforce. So taking advantage to the extent that we can. I mean, this is an area where you need more investment in a time like this, and you're missing an opportunity if you can't allow people to tap into, whether it's adult basic ed or quick 6 months retraining for an emerging industry. And we need to be taking advantage of this time while we can.
Nick Johnson, Elaine Mejia, and Noah Berger, thanks for joining us on Spotlight.
Thank you.
Thank you.